You made a decision 5 seconds ago, and you had absolutely no idea it was happening. Not a guess, not an instinct. A full, calculated choice made entirely without your conscious permission. And the terrifying part? It might not be the last time. Hey, I'm FactSpark. If you want your brain scrambled once a week with ideas that actually matter, subscribe. It's free. And today, it might just change how you see every choice you've ever made. So, free will or fate? Two ideas that have been at each other's throats for thousands of years. And here's the thing nobody tells you up front. The fight is rigged. There are traps hidden in how we even ask the question. And if we don't clear those up first, we're arguing about nothing. Let's fix that. The idea that everything is already decided, that your choices, your mistakes, your greatest moments were all written before you took your first breath, is called fatalism. And it's ancient. The gods of Greece and Rome didn't suggest your future. They stamped it. Destiny wasn't a vague possibility. It was a prison sentence handed down before you were born. Now, you might think, okay, but we don't believe in those gods anymore. Science replaced mythology. Surely we escaped that trap. We didn't. Because science, at a certain point in history, built its own version of fate, and it was arguably more suffocating than anything the ancient Greeks came up with. Isaac Newton gave us the tools to describe the universe like a machine, a perfect, elegant clockwork machine. Push a ball, it rolls. Drop a stone, it falls. Pull two masses together, they attract. Every action following from the one before it, without exception, without negotiation, without surprise. If the universe is a machine, a very big, very precise machine, then given the right information, you could theoretically calculate everything that has ever happened, or ever will. A French mathematician named Pierre-Simon Laplace turned this intuition into one of the most haunting thought experiments in the history of ideas. Imagine, he said, a being, not a god, just an intelligence, that knows the exact position and velocity of every single particle in the universe. With that information and the laws of physics, that being could calculate the entire past and the entire future with perfect accuracy. No magic, no prophecy, just math. This idea became known as Laplace's demon, and if you take it seriously, it means that right now, every word you're about to say, every thought you're about to think, every choice you believe you're about to make was already determined at the moment of the Big Bang. You're not making decisions. You're executing a program that was written 14 billion years ago. Laplace's demon doesn't gamble, by the way. It already knows where the ball lands before the wheel stops spinning. Chance, from its perspective, is just a word humans invented to describe their own ignorance. If this were the 1800s, fate would be winning, and winning convincingly. But then the 20th century arrived, and it brought something that Laplace never saw coming: quantum mechanics. Here's where we need to be careful with language, because sloppy words create sloppy thinking, and this whole debate is buried in sloppy thinking. When philosophers talk about determinism, they mean something specific, that the universe follows laws, that things don't just happen randomly, chaotically, for no reason at all. Cows don't float off the ground. Objects don't vanish into thin air. The universe is lawful. That's determinism in its broadest sense, and it's almost certainly true. But here's what determinism does not mean. It does not mean that every single event was pre-calculated in advance, or that all causes link together in one giant chain stretching back to the beginning of time. That specific version of determinism, the one Laplace's demon needs, is called causal determinism. And quantum mechanics broke it. Here's the key experiment. Take a radioactive atom, carbon-14 for instance. At some point, that atom will decay. It will break down, emit particles, transform into something else. That's guaranteed. But here's what quantum mechanics discovered. You cannot predict when. Not because we lack information, not because our instruments aren't precise enough, but because, and this is the part that still makes physicists uncomfortable, there is no prior cause that determines the exact moment of decay. The atom decays without anything triggering it. It just does, on its own schedule, following no causal chain that connects it to any prior event.
Scientists have tested this exhaustively. The answer keeps coming back the same. These events are genuinely, irreducibly random. Not casino random, where the odds are just complicated. Actually random, causeless. This means Laplace's demon is dead. Even with infinite knowledge of the universe's current state, you cannot predict everything, because some things simply don't have a cause to trace back to. The future isn't a calculation waiting to be run. Parts of it are genuinely open. Fate, as a total, airtight system where every moment is predetermined, the physics doesn't support it. And this is where I want to stop and ask you something directly.
Because I'm genuinely curious, and I think it'll change how you engage with the rest of this video. Before you finish watching, drop this in the comments. Do you feel like you're in control of your life? Or does it feel like things just happen to you? No right answer, no judgment. I read every single one. Okay, back to the fight. So, fate as a complete fixed script is looking shaky. Time to celebrate free will, right? Not so fast. Because now we have to ask, what do we actually mean by free will? And this is where the other trap in this debate is hiding. The classical definition sounds appealing on the surface. Free will is the ability to have done otherwise. Given the exact same circumstances, the exact same you, in the exact same moment, you could have chosen differently. This definition has a fatal flaw. Think about it. If every single variable were truly identical, your brain chemistry, your memories, your mood, your hunger level, every neuron firing at every synapse, would a different choice be possible? Or would it just be the same choice again? Because you are the same person in the same situation. The could have done otherwise definition of free will doesn't actually give us freedom. It just gives us randomness dressed up as choice. But some philosophers pushed even further. What if we had absolute free will? What if our choices were caused by nothing at all? No instincts, no past experiences, no hormones, no memories. Pure, unconditioned choice. Imagine what that would actually look like. There's a classic philosophical thought experiment called Buridan's ass, named after a 14th century scholar named Jean Buridan. Picture a donkey, perfectly hungry, standing exactly halfway between two identical piles of hay. The donkey is purely rational. No preferences, no instincts pushing it one way or the other. Just clean, unconditioned reason. The donkey can't choose. Both options are identical. There's no rational basis for picking one over the other. So it stands there. And according to the thought experiment, it starves. Now, you might say, well, the donkey could reason that dying is worse than eating, so just pick one. But notice what just happened. The moment the donkey uses that reasoning, it's being determined by something. By the knowledge that starvation is bad. By the instinct for self-preservation. The choice only becomes possible because of a determining factor. This is the punchline that flips the whole debate upside down. Determinism, being shaped and influenced by things, isn't the enemy of freedom. It's the prerequisite. Think about it. If the laws of physics didn't work consistently, your muscles wouldn't respond to your intentions. Your memories wouldn't form. Your plans couldn't affect the future. You couldn't do anything at all. Freedom requires a lawful universe to operate in. Some philosophers have put it bluntly. You cannot have genuine freedom without determinism. The two aren't opposites. They're partners. The debate was never actually freedom versus determinism. It was always about which kind of determinism, and how much of it, and whether we have any real agency within it. Which brings us to the main event. Two neuroscientists, one question, completely opposite answers. Robert Sapolsky is one of the most brilliant and provocative thinkers in biology. His argument is simple and brutal. We are not free. Our behavior is entirely the product of forces we didn't choose and cannot control. Your genes were handed to you. Your childhood environment shaped you before you could evaluate it. Your hormone levels right now are influencing your decisions in ways you're completely unaware of. Your brain is running on patterns laid down by every experience you've ever had, and most of that processing is happening far below the level of conscious awareness. And Sapolsky has neuroscience to back him up. In the 1980s, a researcher named Benjamin Libet ran a famous experiment. He asked participants to flick their wrist whenever they felt like it and note the exact moment they decided to move. Meanwhile, he measured their brain activity. What he found was shocking. The brain showed electrical activity associated with movement several hundred milliseconds before the participants reported consciously deciding to move. The decision, it appeared, was made before the person was aware of making it. Later experiments, more sophisticated ones, extended this finding. The conscious experience of choosing might be something that happens after the fact, a story the brain tells itself about a process that was already underway. If Sapolsky is right, the feeling of making a choice, that vivid sense of standing at a crossroads and picking a direction, is an illusion. A very convincing one, but an illusion nonetheless. Consciousness, in this view, is like the sound an engine makes. It's real, you can hear it, but it doesn't actually drive anything. Philosophers call this an epiphenomenon, a byproduct with no causal power of its own. And Sapolsky takes this to its logical conclusion. If we don't truly choose our actions, then moral responsibility is a fiction. Punishment doesn't make philosophical sense. Criminals didn't freely choose to commit crimes. They were the product of genetics, trauma, circumstances, brain chemistry.
Holding them responsible is like blaming a calculator for displaying the wrong answer. This is where a lot of people get uncomfortable, because the conclusion feels wrong, even if the logic seems tight. And that discomfort might be pointing at something important. Enter Kevin Mitchell. Mitchell is also a neuroscientist, and he agrees with Sapolsky on a lot of the science. Yes, most brain processes are unconscious. Yes, our choices are shaped by our genes, our history, our environment. Yes, the brain often initiates action before conscious awareness catches up. But Mitchell thinks Sapolsky is asking the wrong question. The real question isn't whether we're determined. Of course we are. Everything in the universe is in some sense shaped by prior conditions. The real question is whether we are the determining thing. Whether the system doing the processing, you, your brain, your values, your reasoning, is genuinely influencing the outcome. And here, Mitchell says, the answer is yes. When you deliberate, when you genuinely weigh options, consider consequences, apply your values, that process is real. It's not separate from your brain. It is your brain. The fact that it's physical doesn't make it not you. The fact that it follows physical laws doesn't make it not yours. Maybe you can't choose what you desire, but you can, at least some of the time, choose not to act on what you desire. The philosopher Schopenhauer said it cleanly. A person can do what they want, but they cannot want what they want. We don't choose our cravings, but we can engage with them, resist them, redirect them. That's not nothing. That's actually remarkable. Mitchell also makes an evolutionary argument that Sapolsky tends to sidestep. The capacity to model multiple possible futures, to simulate outcomes, to choose between alternatives, this is not an accident. It's not a side effect. It evolved. It was selected for over millions of years because organisms that could genuinely evaluate options and act accordingly did better than organisms that couldn't. Freedom, in this view, is a real biological capability. Not absolute, not unconstrained, but real. And it scales. A 2-year-old has less of it than a teenager. A teenager has less of it than a healthy adult. An adult in the grip of addiction or severe mental illness has less of it than the same person in recovery. Freedom isn't a binary switch, on or off. You have it or you don't. It's a spectrum, a capacity that can grow or shrink depending on knowledge, circumstances, health, and practice. Which means, and this is worth sitting with, that learning, genuinely learning, makes you more free. Understanding how manipulation works makes you harder to manipulate. Understanding your own cognitive biases gives you at least some power over them. Understanding the long-term consequences of a choice makes that choice more genuinely yours. Knowledge is freedom. Not perfectly, not completely,
but meaningfully. So where does this leave us? Let's be honest. Absolute fate, a cosmic script that determines every millisecond of your existence, doesn't hold up. Quantum mechanics alone is enough to punch a hole in Laplace's dream. The universe is lawful, yes, but it isn't pre-calculated. And absolute free will, choices that come from nowhere, caused by nothing, unchained from everything, is equally empty. That's not freedom, that's noise. The donkey starving between two identical piles of hay?
What we're left with is something more complicated, more interesting, and frankly, more honest. A partial, real, earned freedom operating within a determined system. You didn't choose where you were born. You didn't write your own DNA. You didn't design the culture that shaped your earliest intuitions about the world. But you are also not merely the output of those inputs. You process. You reason. You imagine alternatives. You act. And the quality and depth of that processing matters, not just for what you do, but for how free you actually are while doing it. We are not Laplace's demon. We don't calculate the entire future. We are not Buridan's ass. We don't freeze between choices until we collapse. We are something stranger and more interesting than either of those. Beings shaped by forces we didn't choose, capable of acting in ways those forces don't fully determine. Constrained, but not captured. Influenced, but not overwritten. Our freedom is real. It's just smaller than we like to pretend, and bigger than the pessimists want to admit. What happens next is at least in part up to you. If this cracked something open for you, share it with someone who thinks they have all the answers about free will. They might need it more than they know. And if you haven't yet, subscribe. Every week, big ideas, plain language, no fluff. See you next time.